Welcome back to FastGadgets. So it's 11:30 at night here on the 31st of March. Just about to move over into April, and I had somebody ask me what applications I use in Linux, and I thought I would go over my favorite applications. I was going to make this a scripted video, but lately I've just not had the time. And I do apologize. I like doing the scripted videos because they're more streamlined, but I'll try to keep the chatter to a minimum and just get right into it. So one of the first tools that I use quite frequently is the Firefox browser. There's a lot of features I do like about it. I would have to say one of my all-time favorites is the add-ons. And there's a couple of add-ons that I really like. Now, one of them is the ability to download YouTube videos as MP4s, which I use sometime. I have switched to uBlock Origin. I used to be using AdBlock Plus, and honestly, for me, this one just seemed to slow down browsing quite a bit, so it was a real problem for me. So I decided to do away with AdBlock Plus, and I've disabled the YouTube downloader because this one definitely was causing problems. And I don't think DuckDuckGo Plus was a problem at all, and I'll probably re-enable it, but I don't really need to, of course, because you can set the search engine that you like to use anyway. These two features enabled, these two add-ons, I really haven't had much of a problem. And of course, there's just a ton of add-ons in addition to that I could install that I haven't really bothered to. Are there any add-ons that you like? And if so, which ones are you using? Just curious. Now, the other feature that I really like about Firefox that I use quite extensively, and I don't think you can see it on the screen here except for here, is sync. And I'm sure you know you can do it with pretty much every browser, so it's kind of the same no matter where you go. But I have Firefox on my Android devices. I have Firefox on pretty much anything that I use, and I use sync, whether it's in Linux, Windows, my Android devices, to synchronize all of my favorites and my passwords and other utilities that I use or websites that I visit. So when I have to put in information into a form or a password, I can have it be remembered so that I don't have to type it in all the time. And of course, I don't do that with important services like banking. I just don't recommend putting in your password for banking or other important services that you use. For me, that's what I really like about Firefox. Now, many people will say Chrome is better and Chrome is faster. I'm not going to say I'm disagreeing with you. I do normally have Chrome installed, which I have not done yet. The only other browser that's on here right now is Conqueror, and as far as it goes, I'm not 100% sure why Conqueror is even included anymore. The only thing I do like about it is the ability to have an additional browser in the event that I want to do some testing. So, I might decide to say, well, I'm setting up my vid.me website, which I am, and I'll go and just check it out. Well, there's your first problem. I can't spell. That could be a real issue. Let's try that. There we go. Anyway, so I probably do need to have a second browser installed, and at some point I'm definitely going to put Chrome back on because I really do like Chrome. I just don't end up using it as much. Now, I haven't tried Netflix with Firefox lately in Linux. Last I checked, I don't believe it was working, but it may now. I used to use Chrome for that because it had the built-in software so that I could play Netflix videos. Given the choice, I would definitely choose Chrome over Conqueror, but my favorite browser is Firefox. I'm hoping it's going to stick around. I haven't bothered to look. I don't know if anybody else did. Let's see if we can take a quick look here. Yeah, Chrome is basically beating the snot out of everybody. Chrome 3.31, Chrome 45.6, Firefox 51, 7.13. Here's Chrome 55. Now there's a surprise for you. Microsoft Internet Explorer 11, 11.5%. Now this other here, I think, is all the different versions of browsers. So believe it or not, people are still using IE 8.0 and 9 and so on. Now I went ahead and put my favorite software programs that I use here on my favorites menu. And I listed Firefox first. The second, of course, is the command line. Now, many of you will say, well, of course you're going to be using the command line, but it is something that's critical in my opinion. And there's many things in the GUI you can't necessarily do, or you may have to go to the command line in order to get it done. It really depends what tool you need. There's quite a few command line tools. Now I have a video out there of what I consider 10 of the most important command line tools for Mac, Unix, Linux, and BSD. So there's those universal commands out there that are important. And then there's the commands that you might use and you may install a package. Like I really like LM sensors because it lets me see, for example, my processor's temperature. At any rate, there's many command line tools that we can use that I think are important, and we shouldn't not consider the command line. The next thing, of course, is LibreOffice. Now, for whatever reason, when I installed LibreOffice, it did not have a generic LibreOffice icon, so I made it myself. Instead of having all the icons right up front, what I chose to do was create a LibreOffice icon, and that way when I launch it, I can choose which particular program I want to open if I need to open one, and it all is in one app. And the other thing I can do, of course, is look at documents and open documents. So these are my recent documents, so I can check these out. And it doesn't matter whether it's a spreadsheet document or a writer document or whatever. I can basically pull up any document from that menu if I've had it opened recently. Now the one thing I did notice about it that I don't like, if I cruise back over to LibreOffice, and this isn't really a big problem, I consider it a minor issue. If I have like well, actually what it's showing me is several documents that were in my temp folder that have been cleared and it no longer exists. Let's see if I can remove it. Looks like there's a little X right there. Yep, I can remove it. So you may ask, well, can you grade a document that was originally designed for Microsoft Office, and it is a Microsoft Office class, and open them in LibreOffice? And the answer is yes, because not all of the documents are format specific, so they might be an assignment where they have to write about something, or in one case they have to do a computer hardware research document where they go and research different computers, but the formatting of the document isn't important, so I can grade it and I don't have to worry about using LibreOffice. Now, if it becomes an issue where the formatting is specific, I really can't use LibreOffice. I'm going to have to view that document. I have to be 100% sure that it views correctly. And then in that case, what I can do is open up my virtual machine here, which I don't believe this one has Office on it. But usually my virtual machines, I do put Office on it. So, oh no, I do have Office on this one. Okay. So yeah, this virtual machine is my go-to machine when I need to open up student documents and verify them and make sure that they're exactly the way they're supposed to be formatting wise, which is the other program I wanted to talk about, Oracle Virtual Machine, VirtualBox specifically. I really, really, really like VirtualBox, and I feel like it's probably one of the better virtualization programs out there. So I do use it quite a bit. And I'm not going to sign in right now. I'll just do that later. I don't believe my subscription is expired because I get it through one of the schools I teach with. But I think I activated too many licenses because you only get 5, so I'll have to fix that later and deactivate one of my other ones. This to me is the best virtualization tool out there, and I can do all kinds of different things. And if I really need to get into Windows fast, I do have a dual boot set up on this machine. I'm sitting on a Yoga 910 right now, but I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to do a dual boot. I can just boot into my VM here and do whatever work I need to do in the virtual machine and then log it out and shut it off. Or if I want to, which is even faster, I can pause the machine, which is something I do. The other thing that's cool is if I have the machine running, and most of you know this, and if you have an SSD, they're so very fast, I can close the lid on the machine and everything gets suspended, including the virtual machine, which is very cool. So another tool that I use quite frequently that's built into the operating system, and I'm kind of going out of order here because we're talking about Windows 10 and we're talking about VirtualBox, is System Monitor. I use KSysGuard. So System Monitor, this is the KDE version, and I use this quite a bit to check on my system and see what's going on. Right now I've got 100% CPU usage, so I can go look over here. Of course, OBS is doing quite a bit. VirtualBox right now the percentage is at 34%, and Xorg and Pulse Audio. If I want, I could give less processing time to VirtualBox or whatever I need to do. And another thing I can do, if I'm looking at the processes, right now VirtualBox looks like it's hitting between 20 and 30%. It actually was a lot more, but I went into settings in VirtualBox and then in system and processor. Now, I cannot change the number of processors because I got it set at 2, but I can change the execution capacity, so how much of the processor would actually be used. And when I click OK, I can come over here and watch and just see what happens with VirtualBox, and you can see it slows it down. Before it was at 100%, and when it was at 100% execution, this process was actually running at about 46%. So I like System Monitor. It's simple, but it tells me everything I need to know, and I like that it gives me a total CPU usage here. The version that I run with GNOME does not, I'm pretty sure. So you kind of got to guess by threads. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, GNOME System Monitor. So even when I'm in GNOME, I end up using the other one. Of course, it looks ugly as sin because it's not running in the GNOME environment. So try to ignore that. This is processes. I'll go here to resources. And I don't know if it's possible to get it to do it, but I don't get a total for all. Well, I only have 2 cores, but 4 threads. But I kind of have to guesstimate what the CPU's usage is at. Now you may say, well, that's really easy to do, Mark. Look at them. They're all at about 98%. They aren't usually, though. So if I cruise over here and see if I can put this VM to sleep. The System Monitor here for GNOME, normally not all the processes or the threads are actually at that high in execution. And this system doesn't always do a good job of averaging them out. So I just use KSysGuard. Another tool that I really enjoy using that I have running right now is OBS. So we're actually recording here. Now, one of the unfortunate side effects of being on Linux, one of my viewers pointed this out. Let's see if I can remember where the setting is. With encoder, I don't see my Intel encoder, and I do see the Intel encoder when I'm in Windows, so I have to figure that out. If you change to hardware, of course, it'll take much less processing power, and as we saw in SysGuard here in process table, OBS is really hitting the processor pretty hard right now, and it's unfortunate. So, I don't get that much processor usage when I'm doing hardware rendering using the Intel 620 chipset that's on board. So I'm going to have to see if I can figure that out and make that work better for me. What else do I use? Well, I use OBS. I do like OBS. I was using a program called VocoScreen. Now, I actually liked VocoScreen a lot. I don't believe it supports hardware rendering. Really good program. The problem was I was getting skipped frames, and I was using it just a week ago, and you probably saw it, and I made changes all over here and changed everything I could, tried different settings. Nothing seemed to matter. It has something to do with either the new machine, the Yoga 910, or just the fact that the updates, no, it wasn't the Yoga 910, because before I did my updates on Fedora 25, it was working fine, and then it stopped working. So could be FFmpeg, and I just didn't want to bother with it. So what I ended up doing was install OBS Studio, and to do that, all you need is a DNF install OBF-Studio, and you can go ahead and install, OBS Studio, and you can install that. In order to do that, though, and install OBS Studio with DNF, you do have to join the RPM Fusion repository, which you're going to need anyway, because there's a whole bunch of other packages that you're going to want from RPM Fusion. So something to think about. The next application I'm going to talk about is Kdenlive. So my experience with my 7 days of exclusively using Windows 10, I came to realize that for me, the best editor really is Kdenlive. It does everything that I needed to do, and I've come to know it very well, and I've been able to work really well with it. Whoops, looks like I renamed a video clip there, so I will abort that one. And let's open my most recent one. There is a title font change, no problem. Thank you for telling me that. I've learned quite a lot about this editor, so I know its ins and outs really well. And one of the things that I really like about it, and I know all the editors can do this, but you can see I have an offset here on video to audio. When you're using a camera, sometimes, let me go somewhere where, so I've got a camera going here, and the audio gets out of sync just slightly. Most of the time it's fine. All I have to do is offset my audio just a hair so that it is in sync with the video when I actually encode it. It's interesting because I used Premiere when I was on Windows 10. I used Adobe Premiere Pro CC, and I edited, I think, 2 videos in it, and overall it wasn't that bad. But there was one thing that Adobe Premiere Pro couldn't do. If it got a variable frame rate video from, say, a smartphone, it could not keep the audio and video in sync. You actually had to use Handbrake and re-encode the video and audio with a constant frame rate, CFR, in order to get it to work correctly. But you never have to do that with Kdenlive, and you never have to do that with iMovie in a Mac. You only have to do it with Adobe Premiere Pro CC. And it's just, again, it's one of those things. I understand, Adobe's saying, well, our product is a professional product, so we don't know why you would be using camera footage from a smartphone. Well, I've got a 4K smartphone, and it does really good camera footage. So, yeah, I'm going to use it, of course. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. What I did notice, though, was the overall design, and maybe you can't see it as much, but when I used Premiere Pro, I realized, I'm like, wow, Kdenlive really takes a lot of its cues from Adobe Premiere Pro, so a lot of the editing and the functionality and the feature set is very similar to Premiere Pro, and I thought that was pretty neat. So I really find everything I need. There's tons and tons of filters, tons and tons of transitions, different effects that you can add. Pretty much everything you need, in my opinion, is in Kdenlive. One of the things that I noticed with Adobe Premiere Pro CC was that, it crashed. So it would crash. For me, it crashed a couple of times, and that was very concerning. I'm going to go pay whatever it costs on a monthly basis. I think I can get it for $20 a month because I'm an educator, but I'm going to grab this product and it crashes. Some have said, yeah, but, Kdenlive crashes. And, yes, it does. But in all honesty, it only happened to me about as much as Adobe Premiere Pro. So very unfortunate that a product that you're going to pay that kind of money for is going to crash. Kdenlive, really good editing software if it's something that you like. Now, I use GIMP. Believe it or not, I'm going to load GIMP. I'm on a 4K resolution display here, and GIMP still does not really do all that swell of a job of working on 4K monitors. You can see how tiny the icons are here. The funny thing about it is, originally, it was a real issue for me, but then what happened was I began to realize that I kind of know where the tools I need are, and even though they're tiny, I can see them. And once I open a tool and I look at tool options, and I do have my toolbars here kind of screwed up, but if I look at the options, I actually can read it pretty well. It was just these little icons here. So, and I know the ones that I use frequently, and if I don't, I can just hover the mouse over it. So I'm not going to say an accomplished editor, but I could do the basics that I needed, and I got to do layering and all the things that I wanted to do. So, it works for me quite well. I'm one of the people who are used to Adobe Photoshop, so I just didn't want to pay for Photoshop. I mean, basically that's it. I just refused to pay for it. And this one works more than good enough for what I do. I'm not, a professional photographer. I do have a photography degree, but I don't do professional photography anymore, really. So I don't need that type of editor. So this one is good enough for me. Your mileage may vary, so don't listen to this video and say, well, Mark said GIMP's the best editor for photography, and I think he's an idiot because it's nowhere near as good as Adobe. Well, yeah, it's not as good as Adobe. It just doesn't do what we need it to do. If you're using something that's, much more advanced like Adobe and you're used to it. And this is another tool I use all the time. Now, of course, it normally is in the GNOME desktop environment, so it looks a lot better, but I use this tool to record my audio if I'm going to do a scripted video. So this one really comes in handy for me. It's just a little recording tool called Sound Recorder. It's pretty basic, but it works really wonderfully for me. Now the next thing I use, and I put these in the order that I'm most likely to use them. Actually, LibreOffice should be much lower. Text editor. I'm surprised at how much I actually need this. I do quite a lot of different things with it. I'll prepare the text that I'm going to put in the description of a video. I might cut and paste comments that I use frequently when I'm grading. But I found that for various reasons, one reason or another, I need a non-formatted basic text editor. And this one fills the bill for me. I really like it. And of course, it scales correctly because it's a KD Plasma application called KWrite. So it works really great for me, and I can use it for all kinds of things. I can write HTML if I want. I taught an HTML class, so I had to write some basic HTML, and this editor worked handily for me. I know there's better ones out there. Trust me, I know. But that one worked well enough for me. Now, let's look at a couple of other things. I'm always digging into the system settings here in KDE. One of the things that I like to do is I like to flip the screen on display and monitor. So what I'll do is I'll put the device in tent mode. This is a Yoga 910, and the camera is down here instead of up here. So what I ended up doing was just changing the orientation to upside down, and I could then shoot the video and have the camera on top. If I'm in GNOME, I do have a virtual keyboard. I don't believe in KDE it has a virtual keyboard. It's not the end of the world if it doesn't. I mean, I probably could find one. Global keyboard shortcuts, standard keyboard shortcuts. What happens if I click this? Not a whole lot. Layouts, switching policy. No, this is keyboard configuration, but I'm sure I could get a software keyboard if I really needed it. I really don't, though. Usually when I'm shooting a video where I'm doing screen capturing, I'm not using the keyboard, and I have two Bluetooth keyboards if I really do need one. So I'll just flip the computer over, throw it in tent mode, and if I need a keyboard, I'll just pull out one of my Bluetooths, and I could even plug in a USB keyboard, honestly, if I needed to. But I like the camera angle better. I mean, I could get a different camera as well, but one thing I do have is plenty of keyboards here, so I'm not going to bother getting another camera. This one that's built in works perfectly fine, and it only takes me 2 seconds to go ahead and flip the screen so that I can go into tent mode. So not as easy as it is in Windows, of course, which it automatically recognizes screen flips, which is really nice. GNOME did recognize screen flips in my Lenovo Yoga 2, but for whatever reason it does not seem to work with my Lenovo Yoga 910, and the only thing I can think of is the drivers needed to monitor the accelerometers are probably not there yet. So I'm not worried about it. Fedora 26 will be coming out soon, and I have a feeling that, and that's usually the case if I just wait a little while, there will be a fix, and I can just go ahead and update to the newest Fedora, and I'll get that fix. Other tool I use all the time, I know we all do probably, of one sort or another, is File Manager. One of the big things I like to be able to do with it, and this one does a very good job of it, is get access to my Windows partition. So as my users, I actually have quite a few videos and stuff like that here, and I will make use of those because I have OBS on Windows as well, and I might record a video here because I'm recording it in Windows, and then I can get access to it and edit it with Kdenlive, which I like a lot better. I did put Shotcut on Windows 10, but even though you can really pretty much do everything you want to do on Shotcut, I really like Kdenlive. I've become used to it, and I'm getting more and more versed with its features and able to do editing much quicker and do different things. So I'll be sticking with Kdenlive. Some people hate it, but you know, whatever. When I use my Mac, I use iMovie, so I'm not going to say I'm exclusive to one or the other, but that is overall the tools that I like to use. Now, I didn't list it in my favorites, but you can see I've got a game installed here. I do have Steam installed. We got a wee bit of a problem with Steam, so if I run it, you'll see right away what's going on. It is super duper tiny, so there's no scaling whatsoever with Steam. It doesn't matter if I'm in KDE Plasma or GNOME. No scaling whatsoever for the Steam app, and I could probably dig into it and figure it out, but I'm not going to lie, I don't care enough. Basically, what I usually do is just throw an icon for whatever game I need on the desktop, and then I can play my game. And luckily for me, of course, the games that are Linux approved play perfectly fine. They will change the resolution as necessary for optimization. So Left 4 Dead went to, I believe it was 1280 by 720, and I actually went ahead and boosted it to 1080p, and it plays pretty good. It plays way better than it did on my Lenovo Yoga 2 Pro. This is the 910 with the KB Lake i7, so it definitely is better. But I mean, I can see my library, and it's only showing my Linux games, Left 4 Dead 2 and Left 4 Dead. I only have Left 4 Dead downloaded right now, so I'd have to download Left 4 Dead 2. Or no, I'm sorry, this is only the beta, so I guess Left 4 Dead also can't be installed in Linux. But anyway, so I don't do a lot of gameplay in Linux. The only reason I have Left 4 Dead 2 there was I was doing some benchmarking and comparisons with Windows 10. And I know everybody's going to say, yeah, there's no comparison. Well, you're right. There isn't any comparison. Although it plays well enough in Linux, it does play better, way better in Windows 10. It's completely playable. And I did end up getting Fallout 3, and that also plays. I did have to install a DLL patch in Windows 10, but it still works good enough. So if I get more Linux games, they'll show up here. If I really want to do browsing, what I usually end up doing is, and try not to laugh, but yeah, I put into Windows 10. I'm getting a... This is just hilarious. I don't know if you can see that. Let me get a zoom tool up. Okay. Yeah, here's my message. Now, they're trying to get clever and have it pop up in a browser. So, yeah, my Xfinity, I'm almost reached my cap. And this message is actually old because I went in and logged in, and this was a couple hours back, and they already told me I'm on the new month, so... Wow, how cool. They can send me a message on my browser. Just think about that for a minute. Any web browser I'm using on any website I go to, Comcast can send me a pop-up message. I feel special. Well, anyway, if I need to go to the library and I want to see what I've got here, if I want to go to store, and honestly, I haven't tried, like if I go full screen, I'm going to minimize this. If I go full screen, can I make... Doesn't look like it. I tried to make the view bigger, but it didn't seem to work. Let's go over into the corner here and see what options we got. Well, anyway, I still don't think it's that big of a deal. I just don't care enough. I can get to the games I want when I'm in Linux, and it works good enough, basically. So that is pretty much the tools I use and what I'm doing. Now I have a lot of command line tools I use, and that's a whole different video, but we'll go through that. I do want to let you know, anybody who's using OBS, and you're probably aware of this, of course OBS has some cool features. Let me go into settings real quick. I don't know if you can see it really well down here, but minimize to system tray when started. I was thinking... Yeah, either one. Basically, when I do minimize the system tray, I was thinking that it was going to go here on the start bar, but it doesn't. It actually ends up here in the system tray. So I clicked that accidentally, and after that, of course, I couldn't get OBS to show up on screen. So I was like, okay, OBS isn't here, but every time I launch it, it's nowhere. And it took me a long time to figure that out. So if you're a KDE Plasma user, and I'm sure it's the same way in Windows, you know, they have their little, the system tray here doesn't necessarily show everything, so you have to come here. It doesn't look like I can move it to always show over here. So just something to think about if you wonder why OBS isn't coming up on your screen when you start it up, even though you expected it to. So those are the tools that I use most often. I'm sure there's people who use all kinds of other stuff. And if you have some really cool software or applications you use, send them to me. Leave me a comment. I would be very curious, and I'm referring specifically to Linux applications. It doesn't necessarily have to be exclusive to Fedora, but I am looking for apps that I can run in Fedora. That way, I'm able to actually test it out. The one that I did not mention, and I'm actually thinking of changing, I really like Rhythmbox, but Rhythmbox is very pretty in GNOME, of course, and it is ugly, so basic looking in KDE Plasma, but I do like Rhythmbox. I guess it doesn't really matter what it looks like. The font is big enough that I can read it and I can see all of the tabs. So it's really not an issue, but yeah, I do like Rhythmbox. I haven't imported a whole lot of music into it yet. I have a pretty extensive music collection that I need to import into it. Rhythmbox most closely reminds me of iTunes, but I think it does better than iTunes, so I really like it. I don't usually carry a ton of music on my laptop, so I'll just do like a subset or something like that. But yeah, I would say for music, Rhythmbox is my go-to software. And if you have another one that you like that, looks better and is easier to get around, that you think's better than Rhythmbox, let me know. But it does work fine for me so far. With movies, I've had an issue with VLC. It has something to do with these Lenovo. Basically, I don't have VLC installed right now. I actually removed it. If you run VLC, no matter what the size of the screen, it will only show the video in its entirety, basically, but it'll shrink it to only 1/4 of the screen, so about that big. And the built-in video player does just fine for me anyway, so I really don't need it. But it would be nice to have. I like VLC, so compatible with everything. I just can't figure it out. I don't know why it's doing that. Really haven't had too much of a use of system tools. I haven't had to play around with Partition Editor or anything like that yet. I have used Software Center to install software. I want to say this is the KDE version of the software because everything scales correctly, so that's my thinking anyway. And they do a pretty good job. Well, maybe not, because they're showing Nautilus and GNOME and all that. I really don't know. But this is a decent tool. Most of the time I hear about a program and then I just use DNF. I just crashed it. Ha. Anyway, most of the time I just use DNF. I'll find out about some program, like we were talking about with DNF or OBS Studio, and I'll just use DNF to install it. It just seems to be the easiest for me. One thing I don't like about KDE, and I'll just have to figure out a way to turn it off, it always talks to me about updates that I need, and it wants me to do the software updates right in KDE, but I haven't had really good luck with that. Whereas DNF just always works, so that's the one I usually use. I don't have many games installed on here. Matter of fact, I can't think of any that I put on here lately. I did have a couple installed on my Yoga 2 Pro. I'll have to go back and test them out. But I didn't install any specific Linux games lately. Well, that's it in a nutshell. Those are the key programs that I use in Fedora Linux. I used to use a lot more programs, but I've found that I'm able to get along. The less I have to reinstall when I rebuild a computer or I buy a new computer, the less work I need to do to get up and running. So a lot of these are already installed. There's a couple of exceptions: OBS, Kdenlive, and GNU, which is really easy. Just those few apps that I do have to go through and install, but many of them are already here, and it's kind of like a Windows computer. You know, I feel very comfortable with it. I know the software that I need and want in Linux, and I can just do a base install of Linux, and within 20 to 30 minutes I have the apps I need. I've enabled RPM Fusion, and I'm in business, so I can do a scratch Linux install, which I did on this system, and I was back in business within 30 to 40 minutes and copying over my backup of my documents within just a less than an hour. So hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was a little bit long-winded. I hope I didn't chatter on too much, and I hope I answered your questions. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. If you really enjoyed it, you know what I'm going to say. Share this video. I always do appreciate it, and I do appreciate your support. And I have a great time making videos for you, and I hope you're enjoying them as well. I'll see you next time on Fast Gadgets.